The sudden disappearance of the Draconian fleet sent ripples through the galaxy, the kind of ripples that made entire empires question their security. It wasn't just the loss of a fleet, but the complete vanishing of it. No distress signals, no evidence of battle, no signs of anything at all. The Draconians were known for their ruthless conquests and advanced weaponry, but here they were gone like they never existed. Captain Ezra Callahan was one of the first to receive the urgent call to investigate the mysterious event. His task force was the best humanity had to offer, and if anyone could uncover the truth of what had happened, it was them. Callahan stood in the briefing room looking at the holographic map of the galaxy in front of him. It showed the last known coordinates of the Draconian fleet near the edge of the Milky Way, just beyond the rim where space seemed to stretch on forever, and the silence of the unknown weighed heavily. The fleet had been heading toward a newly discovered star system. When they simply vanished, the data was clear, and the silence unsettling. No debris, no remains, no ship fragments, just nothing. It was as if the entire fleet had been erased. He studied the image of the fleet's coordinates, trying to piece together the puzzle, but every angle led to a dead end. The other factions in the galaxy had been quick to comment on the event. Some feared it was the beginning of a larger war. Others speculated that it was an inside job, a betrayal within the Draconian ranks. But Callahan didn't believe in coincidences, he believed in patterns, and right now there was one pattern that stood out to him. The Draconians had underestimated something they had never anticipated, and he was certain it was linked to Earth. It was no secret that humanity had been viewed with disdain by many of the more powerful galactic species. The Draconians, included the human race, had always been seen as primitive, a species of mere survivalists with no real place among the stars. But the truth was that humanity had always been more than that. The galaxy had simply failed to see it, and now the Draconians had made a crucial mistake. They had overlooked Earth and what lay beneath its surface. Callahan turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Vera Hayes, and motioned to the coordinates. "Prepare the ship," he said. "We're heading to that system." Hayes nodded without hesitation. As the crew began to gear up and prepare for the journey, it was going to be a long one, but one that held the promise of answers. The Draconians had always been an enigma to humanity, their origins shrouded in mystery, their motivations unclear, yet their presence felt everywhere. They were the perfect predators, and Earth was their target, but now it seemed that something had gone terribly wrong. As the crew boarded their ship, the Eclipse, a sleek warship outfitted with the latest technology, Callahan couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just investigating the disappearance of a fleet. They were stumbling into a much bigger mystery, one that would shake the very foundation of everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. They had no idea what they were about to uncover, but they were about to find out. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Eclipse drifted away from Earth, disappearing into the vast expanse of space, leaving behind the planet they called home, unaware that this mission would change everything forever. The journey to the edge of the galaxy felt endless. The vastness of space was both humbling and intimidating. Every passing star seemed to mock the uncertainty of their mission. Captain Callahan sat in the command chair, his hands folded tightly as the ship moved deeper into the unknown. They had traveled for days with no sign of the Draconian fleet, no clues, no answers, nothing at all. The silence around them grew heavier with each passing hour. Lieutenant Hayes stood beside him, staring out at the black expanse. "Anything yet?" Callahan asked, his voice low. "Not yet, sir," Hayes replied, her eyes fixed on the data streams that flickered across the console. "But we're getting close to the last known coordinates of the fleet. The sensors are picking up some strange anomalies, but nothing concrete." Callahan sighed but didn't take his eyes off the stars. He knew they had to be getting closer to the truth. But the deeper they went into this mystery, the more uneasy he felt. The Draconians were not a species that simply vanished. They were ruthless warriors known for their strategic genius and advanced technology. There had to be a reason they were gone, and whatever it was, he suspected it had something to do with Earth. As they neared the star system, where the fleet had last been seen, the sensors picked up a faint signal. Callahan's heart skipped a beat. The signal was weak and fragmented, but it was definitely artificial. Someone or something had left it behind. The crew quickly set to work trying to decipher the message. As they worked, Hayes approached Callahan, her face troubled. "Captain, we found something else." she said, her voice tight. "There's a hidden structure just beyond the star system, a large one buried beneath the surface of a nearby planet. It's not on any of the galactic maps we've seen before. It's almost like someone didn't want us to know it was there." Callahan looked up. The thought of a hidden structure was unsettling. The fact that it had been kept secret for so long was even more alarming. "Set a course for the planet," he said. "We need to see what's there." As the ship moved toward the planet, the team worked quickly to decode the signal. It was barely audible, but they managed to make out a few key phrases. The words that stood out were "chilling Earth's legacy" and "do not awaken." Something about the message made the hairs on the back of Callahan's necks stand up. This wasn't just some random transmission, it was a warning. They arrived at the planet, a barren, rocky world with no signs of life. The surface was pockmarked with craters and dust storms whirling around the horizon. The ship descended toward a secluded region near the planet's poles, where the structure had been detected. The closer they got, the more the ship's systems began to act erratically. Readings spiked, and the atmosphere outside seemed to crackle with a strange energy. "We're entering the planet's atmosphere, Captain," Hayes said, her voice tense. "Stay alert," Callahan replied. "We don't know what we're walking into here." As the ship landed, the crew disembarked cautiously. The air was thin and cold. Their boots crunched on the rocky surface. As they made their way toward the entrance of the structure, the walls of the building were ancient, made of a material unlike anything they had ever seen before. It shimmered in the light, but also seemed to absorb it at the same time. It was as though the structure was alive somehow. They entered the structure, and what they found inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. Hidden beneath the surface of the planet was a vault filled with technology more advanced than anything humanity or the Draconians had ever encountered. The air hummed with energy, and Callahan felt a deep sense of unease. This was the beginning of something much larger than they could have prepared for. As they ventured deeper into the structure, the atmosphere grew more intense. The air was thick with a strange energy that hummed in the walls and floors of the vault. The crew moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The deeper they went, the more they realized this place was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The walls were covered in intricate symbols and patterns glowing faintly in the dim light. Each symbol seemed to shift as they moved past it, as if the vault itself was watching them. Callahan felt the weight of the place pressing down on him. Every step seemed to bring them closer to something ancient and powerful. He turned to Hayes, who was examining a set of glowing panels on the wall. "What do you make of this?" he asked, his voice low. "It's not human," she replied. "This technology is beyond anything we've ever created. It's almost as if it was built by a race that was far ahead of us, and far ahead of the Draconians too." Her eyes widened as she traced her fingers along the panels. "These symbols are a form of language, but they're unlike anything we've encountered before." The crew continued to explore the vault, their movements slow and deliberate. They came to a large chamber at the heart of the structure, where a massive object stood in the center. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. A towering figure of smooth metal and glowing lights pulsed within it. It seemed to be alive in a way the crew couldn't fully understand. "What is that?" Lieutenant Hayes whispered as she stepped closer to the object. "It looks like some kind of energy core," Callahan said. "But its design, it's not like anything we know." The object seemed to respond to their presence. As they gathered around it, a low hum filled the chamber, and the lights within the core brightened. Callahan stepped forward, reaching out instinctively. As if drawn to it, his hand hovered over the surface of the core, and for a moment everything went still. Then, with a sudden flash of light, the core activated. A holographic image appeared in the air. Before them, an image of a figure unlike any human or Draconian. Their skin shimmered with a faint glow, and their eyes glowed with an ancient wisdom. The figure spoke in a language the crew couldn't understand, but the message was clear. The energy surrounding them pulsed with power, and the words that echoed in their minds were in perfect translation. "Earth was the cradle of the ancients. The key to the galaxy's future lies in your hands." The voice resonated deep within them, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble. The holographic figure continued, "The Draconians have long sought this power. Their defeat was not by chance, they were warned, but they ignored the truth of what Earth contains. The legacy of the ancients lies dormant beneath your world, ready to awaken." Callahan stepped back, his heart racing, as he tried to process the weight of the message. "What does this mean?" he muttered under his breath. Hayes stared at the hologram, her eyes wide with shock. "It means that we've been searching for answers in the wrong places all along," she whispered. "The Draconians knew about this power, but they didn't understand it. And now it's up to us to decide whether we awaken it or keep it hidden forever." Callahan turned toward his crew, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. They had uncovered something far greater than they could have imagined, something that could change the course of history forever. But the question remained, would they control this power, or would it control them? As the crew stood there in the heart of the vault, the weight of what they had just uncovered pressed heavily on them. The words of the holographic figure echoed in Callahan's mind. "The legacy of the ancients lies dormant beneath your world, ready to awaken." It was a truth they could not ignore. The power that lay beneath Earth could reshape the galaxy and possibly bring about its destruction. Yet Callahan knew they could not simply walk away from it. The Draconians had been warned, and they had failed to heed that warning. Now it was humanity's turn to face the consequences. Callahan paced the chamber, his mind racing through the possibilities. He turned to Lieutenant Hayes. Her face was grim. "What do you think this power really is?" he asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. "I don't know, Captain," Hayes replied, "but the fact that the Draconians sought it for so long means it has to be something extraordinary. It could be a weapon, it could be a force of nature, something that could turn the tide of galactic wars in an instant." She paused, her expression darkening. "It could also be something that could destroy us all." The crew stood silently around them, each member lost in their own thoughts. No one spoke for a long while. The decision that lay before them was not one to be taken lightly. They could not afford to make a mistake. One wrong move could spell disaster. Finally, Callahan turned toward his crew. "We need to find out more about this legacy," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever it is, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. The Draconians may be gone, but there are others out there who would kill for this power. We have to figure out how to control it or destroy it before it gets out of hand." Hayes nodded. "Agreed, sir. We need to find out everything about this place and what the ancients left behind." They continued to explore the vault, looking for any clue that could tell them more about the true nature of the power hidden beneath Earth. The walls seemed to pulse with energy as they moved deeper into the structure. It was as if the vault itself was alive, responding to their presence. Every step they took seemed to stir something deep within the Earth itself. As they ventured further into the vault, they discovered a series of hidden chambers, each one filled with more advanced technology than the last. There were devices that hummed with energy and machines that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They even found intricate maps showing regions of space where the ancients had traveled. It became clear that the ancients had once been a powerful and enlightened race, far ahead of anyone else in the galaxy. But as they uncovered more about the ancients and their technology, Callahan began to realize something terrifying. This power was not meant for the faint of heart. The ancients had built it with the intention of controlling the very fabric of reality itself, and the more they uncovered, the more they realized that it had the potential to warp the galaxy in unimaginable ways. "We need to leave," Hayes said suddenly, her voice tense. "This place is giving off a dangerous energy. I don't think we're supposed to be here." Callahan hesitated, but knew she was right. There was something wrong about the vault, something that didn't sit right with him. They had come this far, but the cost of continuing was beginning to outweigh the potential benefits. "Let's head back to the ship," he said. "We need to regroup and figure out our next move." But as they turned to leave, the vault suddenly began to shake. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, and the walls cracked open, revealing a hidden passage. The ground beneath their feet shifted and trembled, and the crew was thrown off balance. The power of the vault was awakening. The vault trembled violently as the ground beneath their feet shifted. The crew stumbled as the walls cracked open, revealing a dark passage that stretched deep into the planet's core. The rumbling continued, and a low hum filled the air. It was as if the entire structure was waking up, a dormant force that had been waiting for centuries, now awakened by their presence. "Everyone stay alert," Callahan commanded, his voice sharp as he grabbed onto a nearby pillar for balance. The crew instinctively reached for their weapons, but something about the energy in the air made them hesitate. The vault itself seemed to be alive, responding to their every movement, as if it were conscious of their presence. Lieutenant Hayes stepped forward cautiously. "Captain, this isn't just a structural malfunction. This is deliberate," she said, her voice tense. "Something is trying to keep us here." Callahan's eyes narrowed as he scanned the now opening passage ahead. "We've uncovered something far more dangerous than we anticipated," he muttered, "but we can't turn back now." The crew moved slowly into the passage, their footsteps echoing in the darkness ahead. The walls seemed to pulse with energy as they made their way down the corridor. The air grew colder and thicker with every step they took. They had no idea what awaited them at the end of this passage, but Callahan knew one thing for certain: whatever it was, it could change the fate of the galaxy. As they reached the end of the passage, they came to a massive chamber the size of a city block. At its center was a massive spherical object suspended in the air. It glowed with an eerie light, and the energy surrounding it was unlike anything they had ever felt. It radiated a power so intense that it made the crew feel as if they were being pulled toward it, drawn by an invisible force. "What is that?" Hayes whispered as she stared at the glowing sphere. Callahan didn't answer, at first his mind racing as he tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The object seemed to hum with energy. It was as if it was alive, but not in the way they understood life. It was something more, something ancient, something powerful. He stepped forward cautiously. "Whatever this is, it's the source of everything we've seen so far," he said, his voice low. "The Draconians weren't just after a fleet, they were after this power. They must have known about it all along." Hayes looked at him with wide eyes. "You mean this power could have been what caused the Draconians to disappear?" Callahan nodded. "It's possible. They tried to harness this energy, but they weren't prepared for what it could do." The crew gathered around the sphere, unsure of how to approach it. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and yet it felt familiar, like a force they could feel deep in their bones. It was as if the galaxy itself was telling them that this was their responsibility to control or to destroy. Suddenly, the sphere pulsed once more, and a wave of energy rippled through the chamber. The ground shook violently, and the crew was thrown to the floor. Callahan scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding as the walls began to crack and shift. The energy was becoming unstable. They had to make a choice now. "We need to get out of here," Callahan shouted as the chamber began to collapse around them. The crew didn't hesitate. They ran toward the passage. As the walls crumbled behind them, the air was thick with dust and debris, and the sound of the collapsing vault filled their ears. They barely made it back to the ship as the entire structure collapsed into the planet's surface behind them. The crew stood on the bridge of the eclipse, watching the smoke and debris rising from the planet's surface. Callahan's mind was racing. They had uncovered the power that the Draconians had sought, and now they had to decide what to do with it. "Captain," Hayes said, her voice tense, "we can't let this power fall into the wrong hands. Whatever it is, it's too dangerous. We need to destroy it." Callahan stared out into the vastness of space, the weight of the decision pressing on him. He didn't know if they could destroy it, or if they even had the right to, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The crew stood in stunned silence as they watched the planet's surface break apart in the distance. The force of the energy wave they had released was unimaginable. The vault had collapsed into the depths of the planet, and what remained of it was now a crater. The glowing sphere at the heart of the structure was gone, but the lingering energy was still palpable in the air. The hum of power reverberated through the ship's hull, as if the galaxy itself was reacting to their actions. "Captain," Hayes said, her voice tight with urgency, "we can't just leave. We need to make sure this doesn't spread to other systems." Callahan nodded, his mind still racing. He had thought about destroying the power, but now he wasn't so sure that was even possible. It wasn't just a weapon or a device. It was an ancient force, something that had been locked away for millennia, something that could change the fabric of reality itself, and they had just released it into the galaxy. "Prepare the ship for departure," he ordered. "Set a course back to Earth. We need to regroup and figure out what comes next." The Eclipse turned slowly and began its journey back toward Earth. As the crew moved through the ship, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had just set in motion a series of events that they couldn't control. They had uncovered the legacy of the ancients, but now they had to live with the consequences of their discovery. The power they had unleashed was still out there, and they had no idea what it would do or who would come after it. As the ship entered hyperspace, and the stars around them stretched into lines of light, Callahan sat in his quarters, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The last known location of the Draconian fleet was still marked on the map, but now there were new signals appearing across the galaxy, strange energy spikes that were spreading out like ripples in a pond. "What have we done?" he muttered to himself as he watched the signals appear and disappear on the map. It was clear that whatever they had unleashed wasn't just confined to one planet, it was spreading and fast. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Captain Hayes's voice came through. "We've detected an unknown ship approaching our position. It's not responding to our signals, and it's on an intercept course." Callahan stood up and moved toward the door. "Have we identified it?" "Negative, sir," Hayes replied. "It's not showing up on any of our databases. It's unlike anything we've encountered before." Callahan's heart skipped a beat. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. Whatever they had uncovered had attracted attention, and now someone was coming to take it from them. Alert the crew, we're going to need to be ready for anything. As the ship continued its course toward Earth, the unknown vessel drew closer, its dark silhouette becoming more defined against the backdrop of stars. Callahan stood on the bridge watching the approach. The tension was thick in the air. It wasn't just the unknown ship that had them on edge. It was the realization that whatever was coming was tied to the ancient power they had unleashed. "Keep our distance," Callahan ordered, "but be ready to engage if necessary." The unknown ship continued its approach, and as the seconds ticked by, it became clear that they weren't just dealing with a simple encounter. This was something much bigger. They had uncovered a force beyond their understanding, and now they were about to face the consequences. The ship grew ever closer, and the crew braced themselves for whatever would come next. The unknown vessel loomed closer, its dark silhouette cutting through the void of space, like a shadow creeping toward them. Callahan stood at the helm of the Eclipse, his fingers hovering over the controls, his mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just a random ship, it was a warning. They had stirred something powerful by releasing the ancient force beneath Earth, and now someone or something was coming to claim it. "Captain, the unknown ship is on an intercept course," Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice steady but tense. "It's not responding to our hails, and its energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before." "We're not in a position to engage unless we have to," Callahan replied as he scanned the vessel's trajectory on the ship's monitors. "Keep our distance and see if we can establish contact again. If it comes to that, we'll need to be ready for anything." The ship drew nearer, and with every passing second, Callahan felt the weight of the moment settling in. The crew had uncovered something far beyond their comprehension, and now it was becoming clear that the universe had taken notice. Whatever this ship was, it wasn't just a passerby, it was a part of something much bigger. Captain Hayes's voice broke through his thoughts. "I'm detecting strange signals coming from this ship. They're not communication signals, but more like a pattern, something familiar. I think it's using the same kind of energy we detected from the vault earlier." Callahan's heart skipped a beat. "It's connected to the ancient power." "It's possible," Hayes confirmed. "I think it's trying to tap into the same energy source that we found beneath the planet's surface." The ship was now dangerously close. They could see its surface more clearly. It was sleek and dark, almost metallic, with strange glowing lines running along its hull that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. The energy emanating from it was like nothing they had ever encountered. It was both alien and familiar at the same time. The air on the Eclipse seemed to thrum with tension. "We need to make a decision," Callahan said, his voice low and determined. "If they're coming for the power, we need to be prepared to stop them." He turned to his crew. "Arm the weapons, but hold fire. We don't know who or what we're dealing with yet." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the unknown vessel moved into range. It was now within a few hundred meters, and it showed no signs of stopping. Suddenly, The ship emitted a pulse of energy, a beam of light, that struck the Eclipse shields with a force that rattled the entire ship. Shields holding the tactical officer reported quickly, but their energy readings just spiked. "Return fire," Callahan ordered without hesitation, "but aim to disable, not destroy. We need answers, not a fight." The Eclipse fired a burst of energy from its weapons array. The beams slammed into the unknown ship's hull with a brilliant flash of light, but the ship barely seemed to react. Instead, it released another pulse of energy, this time targeting the ship's engines. The Eclipse shuddered as the pulse hit, and a flicker of alarm lights went off across the bridge. "Engines are losing power," Hayes called out. "We're being pulled into their gravitational field." Callahan gritted his teeth. They were being drawn toward the unknown ship at an alarming rate. The Eclipse's thrusters struggled to maintain control as the gravitational pull increased, but it was no use. They were being pulled in against their will. "Captain, what should we do?" Hayes asked, her eyes wide with concern. Callahan clenched his fists. He knew they had no choice but to face whatever was coming. They were being dragged into the unknown, and there was no turning back now. "Brace for impact," he said, his voice steady. "We're going to have to find another way out of this, but for now we fight." The ship's lights flickered as they neared the unknown vessel. The pull of its energy was almost overwhelming. The Eclipse was seconds away from being completely drawn in, and Callahan knew they had only one chance to stop whatever was about to happen. The pull of the unknown ship's gravitational field intensified as the Eclipse was dragged closer. Every system on the ship flickered and sputtered as the crew fought to maintain control. The crew's nerves were stretched to their breaking point. With every passing second, as the dark vessel loomed just ahead, it was now clear that this was no ordinary ship. It was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen before. The glowing lines on its hull pulsed like the beating heart of a living creature. "We're being pulled in faster," Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice trained as she gripped the console in front of her. "We won't be able to fight it much longer." Callahan's mind raced, but his face remained calm. They had no choice. Now they had to confront whatever force was at the heart of this encounter. "Prepare for boarding," he ordered, his voice steady, though he could feel the tension in his chest. "Everyone to their stations." As the ship drew closer, Callahan could see that the unknown vessel was not just a ship, but a vast structure. Its surface was smooth and black, with strange geometric patterns carved into its hull. It was as if it had been designed to blend with the darkness of space itself, and yet it emanated an undeniable energy, a force that called to them, a pull that reached deep into their bones. "Captain," the tactical officer called out, "they're locking onto us. We're being pulled into a docking bay." Callahan nodded grimly. "Prepare for impact. Brace yourselves." The Eclipse was slowly pulled into the docking bay of the unknown ship with a gentle yet unavoidable force. The ship's hull scraped against the smooth surface of the docking area, and the crew was thrown off balance as the ship came to a halt inside the massive structure. The lights on the Eclipse flickered, and the hum of the engines died down, leaving only the unsettling silence of the unknown vessel. "We've made contact," Callahan muttered under his breath. "Now we find out who or what is behind this." The crew cautiously gathered their gear and prepared to leave the ship. The air on the Eclipse felt heavy with uncertainty as they moved toward the airlock. The doors opened with a low hiss, and the crew stepped out into the unknown, their weapons drawn and their senses on high alert. They found themselves in a vast chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were made of the same smooth black material as the outside of the ship, and the air was thick with a strange energy. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of power that seemed to resonate from every corner. "This place feels wrong," Lieutenant Hayes whispered, her voice barely audible as she scanned the surroundings. "It's not like anything we've ever encountered." Callahan nodded. "Stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." They moved deeper into the chamber, the eerie silence pressing in on them like a living thing. Every step they took seemed to echo through the vast emptiness. The walls stretched on endlessly in all directions, as if they were inside a living organism. "Captain," one of the crew members called out, "over here." Callahan turned to see a figure standing at the far end of the chamber. It was tall and cloaked in darkness, its features obscured by the shadows, but there was no mistaking the presence of something powerful standing before them. The figure spoke in a voice that reverberated through the chamber. "You have awakened something ancient, something that should have remained buried, but now you are here, and you must face the consequences of your actions." Callahan stepped forward, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Who are you, and what do you want with us?" The figure remained still, but its presence was overwhelming. "We are the keepers of the legacy, the ones who were tasked with guarding the power you unleashed. You cannot control it. No matter what you think you have done, you will never control the legacy of the ancients." The figure raised a hand, and the energy around them began to pulse brighter. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Callahan realized with a sinking feeling that they had only just begun to face the true consequences of their actions.